from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to the Friday night edition of the program. We're live, we're national. Happy to be here. Give us a call if you want to join our late night national town hall conversation. The phone number is 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. And I want to obviously get into the biggest story of the day. President Volodymyr Zelensky visiting the White House. It was expected that he was going to engage in a deal with President Trump, the mineral deal, and he came to sign the deal. That's not how it went down. Not at all. This thing was televised. It reminded me of the showdown with Chuck and Nancy, right? You remember when Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi sat down with the president? And I think that the president's very smart. When he brings the cameras into the Oval Office and says, yeah, come on. I'm going to show you how this really goes down. I believe it's because he wants people to know how contentious these negotiations are. And just like it was with Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, where he held his position but maintained his demeanor, kept his cool, same thing you see today. Now, today, I got to say, I think he was a little bit bothered by these statements from President Zelensky, who said something like, and you too, you will, one day you'll know. And then he tried to take it back. And honestly, I'm being very fair here. I thought it was a slick remark at first when he says, well, you don't know, but you will know, right? As it, like, you don't know what it's like to be at war, but you will. Almost as if it came across to me as a threat. But again, I am a easily triggered, chip on my shoulder type of person where, I think everybody's out to get me. I'm one of those. So in reanalyzing it, I think maybe it is his poor ability to express himself combined with his language barrier, right? Because other world leaders, I don't understand a lick of what they're saying, but you could see that their body language, how they're communicating. This person's body language, President Volodymyr Zelensky, was, he had his arms folded. He was all but pouting, eye rolling, murmuring under his breath. So it was contentious. President Trump, in I'm going to say a fatherly way, right? Told him, hold it now. Don't say that. You don't know that. And I'm giving you the play-by-play without playing the audio, but I'm going to play the audio for you. But let me tell you, it was really something. And that is where President Zelensky went wrong. And I don't want to take the position that I think he had to come here and be humble. I don't. I think he could come here and be a jerk. He's got a right to do whatever he wants. But it wasn't smart for him to do what he did. Right? He could have come here. I'm pretty sure if it were, I don't know, who's the other guy that he's at war with? Vladimir Putin. Putin's not going to come here and be nice, but he'll be respectful. He's going to, he likes to make his snide remarks. Whenever, you attack him, he just flips it right back on you and says, oh, but you Americans, you cannot figure out what's going on with BLM. You can't figure out if you're men or men or you're women or women. You're going to put your fingers at me. But he does it in a smooth way. It's very snide. It's very cynical. It's very snarky. But it doesn't come across as disrespect. Mr. Zelensky definitely came across as disrespectful in this exchange. Check this out.
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you are not
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come into the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media. Right now, you guys are going around and forcing conscripts to the front lines because you have manpower problems. You should be thanking the president for trying to bring an end to this conflict.
Have you ever been to Ukraine that you say what problems we have?
I have been to...
Come once.
Now, he's using a very Putin-esque way, right? J.D. Vance says, you are using the enlisted, the conscripts, to go ahead and bolster your military because your men are dying at the hands of Russians, is what he's saying. And he pushes back, right? He pushes back saying, have you even been to Ukraine? I don't think this is inappropriate. I think it may have been an interjection. He could have waited till the vice president was done. But I understand he's fighting and he's pushing back, something Trump does all the time, something I do all the time, right? So I have to I can't fault him for doing something I likely would have done also. But I feel like the delivery fell flat. It just didn't come off the right way. Go ahead.
I've actually watched and seen the stories, and I know what happens is you bring them on a propaganda tour, Mr. President. Do you disagree that you've had problems bringing people into your military?
We have problems.
And do you think that it's respectful to come to the Oval Office of the United States of America and attack the administration that is trying to prevent the destruction of your country?
A lot of questions. Let's start from the beginning.
Sure.
First of all, during the war, everybody has problems. Even you, but you have nice ocean and don't feel now, but you will feel it in the future.
Right there. That's the moment. That is the moment that would have pissed me off too. Right now, you don't feel it, but you will feel it in the future. What? What are you saying? This to me was the equivalent of your jaw doesn't hurt right now, but it's going to hurt real soon. I interpret that as, why? You going to punch me, bro? Mess around and find out, right? Go ahead.
God bless. God bless. You will not have a war.
Hold it one more time. Now I think he starts backtracking. He says, God bless, God bless, God bless, which I think he's trying to say. I really do. I'm not trying to be an apologist for him, but I just, you could see, I think he felt like he spoke wrong, and he starts saying, God bless, as in, God forbid. God forbid this ever happens to you. God forbid you're ever attacked by a neighbor. God forbid you're ever neighbors with Russia. But at this point, it was too little too late, because now you mess with the bull, you get the horns. And he didn't get polite J.D. Vance. Now he got triggered Trump. And I would have been triggered too. Shoot. I'm not going to have this guy who's just extorted my country for whatever, $300 billion and is playing with the brink of World War III, comes into the White House without a jacket on, number one. On an aside, I was at Mar-a-Lago once, and I was talking to somebody, and they were telling me about how, some huge billionaire, inventor of something, founder of what, no, Lord knows what. There's a lot of them there. And the person tells me, oh, you know that guy? Yeah, he's a relatively new member. And I tell him, hey, so-and-so, Mr. President, so-and-so wants to meet you. And he says, tell him to put on a jacket. Because that's the rules of the club. I give President Trump a lot of credit here, right? A lot of credit for not requiring presidents. And then he was even gracious enough to say, and I love the way you're dressed, which I think might have been a low-key snub, but he was polite about it. Right? He said he came across as sincere. I love the way you're dressed. So I just wanted to put that out there. Go ahead.
We're trying to solve a problem. Don't tell us what we're going to feel.
I'm not telling you.
Because you're in no position to dictate that. Remember
exactly
this.
I'm not
you're in no position to dictate what we're going to feel. We're going to feel very good.
You will feel influence.
We're going to feel very good.
Hold on. Now this is where he starts to dig his own grave. It's one thing to talk slick and be like, oh, shoot, I said something wrong. And he tries to backtrack. And it may have worked, but it was too late because now it's a 2-on-1. Right now, J.D. Vance bows out gracefully because Trump's taken the floor. And he's like, yeah, you will feel influence. What influence are you talking about? You just finished saying that we were going to feel what it's like to be at war. What are you talking about, sir? Now he goes into, well, you will feel the influence. Now, again, I do not speak Ukrainian, not on my best day. His English, way better than my Ukrainian. I don't want to presume to communicate better in a foreign language. Maybe Spanish, maybe even some Portuguese, not Ukrainian. So I think at this point when he's talking about, maybe he's using the wrong word, maybe he's very rough around the edges, maybe he is an A-list or B-list comedian from Ukraine that's now, the president and ended up in a war that doesn't end. And, doing the best he can. But saying all of that, I'm not here to defend the guy. I'm just giving you an observation. If he's in over his head, he's in over his head. And at this point, I think this is where it's wrong. I think he should have reset the table and realized, you know what? I'm in this man's house. I am in a different country. This country's been extraordinarily good to me. And I would stop and reset at that moment and say, excuse me, I think we may be off on the wrong foot. Perhaps I may have misspoken. That was not my intention. I'm not here to disrespect you. I'm here to get to a solution, just like you're suggesting. But he didn't. He doubles down because he's hot under the collar, too. And this is not good, right? This is not good. And it doesn't go well from here. Go ahead.
You will feel influence.
You're right now not in a very good position. You've allowed
From the
yourself
very-
to be in a
from
very
the
bad
very
position,
beginning
and he
of the
happens
war.
to be right about
From
it.
the very beginning of the war.
You're not
Mr.
in a good
Brown,
position.
I
You don't
was
have
in
the cards right now. With us, you start
I'm
having
not playing
cards.
cards.
But right now, you
I'm
don't.
very
Yeah, you're playing
serious,
cards.
Mr. President.
You're
I'm
playing
very
cards.
serious.
You're gambling
I'm the
with the
president
lives
in
of
war.
millions of people.
You think-
You're gambling with World War
What
III.
what you're
You're
speaking
gambling
about?
with
What are you
World
speaking
War
about?
III. And
You-
what you're doing is very disrespectful to the country, this country. That's
with
back
all
to
respect
you.
to your
Far
country.
more than a lot of people said
very
they
respect.
should have.
Have you said thank you once?
A lot
Entire
of
meeting?
times.
No, in this
Even
entire
today.
meeting, you said thank
Even
you.
today.
You went to Pennsylvania and campaigned for the opposition.
And he tagged
in
J.D.
October.
Vance back in.
Offer some words of appreciation for the United States
what
of
you're speaking
America
about.
and the president who's trying to save your country.
Let me tell you, if I am not a diplomat, I mean, I talk on the radio. That's how I make my living. I guess I'm on paper considered a professional broadcaster, communicator. I've given a speech or three, but I don't think I'm a world leader. I'm not a statesman. I'm none of those things. I didn't catch the total beginning of this. I've not seen it from beginning to end. I've seen, probably about 15 minutes of the 50 in clips. But I have to say, if he didn't start with a resounding thank you, a resounding, heartwarming and heartfelt, so happy to be here. Thanks for opening the White House to me. I really appreciate you and the American people. I want to thank the Academy. Shout out to my mom and dad. God bless America. If he did not start with those types of platitudes, shame on him. And all I could say when I say shame on him, I saw the shame on the face of the people that were in the room off camera. There was a couple of press photos of the diplomatic team that accompanied Zelensky. I think one of them, she may have been one of the ambassadors, maybe the ambassador or part of the ambassador's team. She was literally face palming herself in with the incredulity of what was going on. Like, oh my God, I can't believe he's doing this. I can't believe this is happening. This, in my opinion, you could have had a worst case scenario, like, they could have shoved each other and, buffeted each other. But short of that, this is probably the worst outcome they could have possibly wanted, the Ukrainians. And this is where they are. So I want to get some analysis on this. And, of course, President Zelensky tucking tail, running out of the White House, going straight over to Fox News to talk about how he didn't give an apology. And I want to get the geopolitical and military analysis on this from General Bob Dees. He's coming up right now. So keep it locked right here. It's Rich Valdez. We're coming right back.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Well, thank you, Rich, and thank you for everything. I know you very well, and I listen, but I have a lot of people that listen, and they love your show, and I appreciate it very much.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
So I'm not hearing from you, Mr. President, a thought that you owe the president an apology.
No, I respect President and I respect American people. And if, I don't know, if I think that we have to be very open and very honest. And I'm not sure that we did something bad. I think maybe sometimes some things we have to discuss out of media, with all respect to democracy and to a free media. But there are things where we have to understand the position of Ukraine and Ukrainians. And I think that is the most important thing.
That, of course, President Zelensky on Fox News with Brett Baer saying he does not think he owes an apology because he doesn't. He said, I'm not sure that we did something bad. We just need to have this conversation off camera. Now, I guess I could understand that perspective, but brother, you came to the White House in the United States and you talked out of turn, in my opinion. I think you should be apologetic just for the sake of good optics. But what do I know? I want to see what the geopolitical implications here are going to be. And the military aspect, because there was talk about NATO not being, there's always been talk about NATO, right? And Trump reiterating that we're committed to NATO, but NATO needs to step up. So there's a lot going on. I want to get the analysis from our guest, General Bob Dees. Welcome back, sir.
Hello, Rich. Good to talk to you tonight.
Thank you, sir. Now, you've heard a lot of this contention. I want you to hear, if you don't mind, this back and forth with President Trump regarding NATO. Listen to this.
We're committed to NATO, but NATO has to step up, and the Europeans have to step up more than they have. And I want to see them equalize, because they are in for far less than we're in, and they should be at least equal. You understand that? Why is the United States, we have an ocean in between, why is the United States in for so much more money and other things as Europe? With that being said, and as you said, they've also been obviously very helpful, but we have put in far more than they have, and I think they should equalize.
So, General, I want to get your take on all of this, both on the contentious conversation and then subsequently their comments right now about NATO.
You bet, Rich. Well, all sorts of angles we could take on this. My grandmother used to say, you open your mouth and you run a confessional. And I think Zelensky in the White House today ran a confessional. Reality is our friend, and when we get the real emotions and thoughts from Zelensky, I think the president took some very important logical steps to not condone somebody that wants to be on American largesse, and at the same time not meet the conditions of coming to a peaceful agreement.
Yeah, listen, I agree. And I think, just in, if we're using Robert's Rules of Orders here, I just think the whole thing was in bad form. You can't walk on, elected Americans can't walk on the floor of the United States Congress without wearing a jacket. Even Jim Jordan puts on a jacket and takes it off once he's sitting. And yet we have,
right.
A foreign head of state. And, if that were their traditional garb, I'd say, all right, hey, that's how they dress. But it just, I felt a little slighted by President Zelensky's presence, and that may be petty on me, but I feel like it didn't help, and the optics of it don't lend themselves well to the overall outcome of all but getting asked to leave.
Right. No, you're right. I think a while back, America romanticized Zelensky and the war in Ukraine and the heroism, and that is all true. But we have a former actor and comedian who became a politician. When he became a politician, he eliminated a lot of his opposition forces in jail and otherwise. And so for him to come into the White House, the seat of democracy, and express arrogance, express intransigence, not honor the normal decorum of the White House, all of that, was wrong-footed at best.
Well, General, stick with me. We're going to come back and continue this conversation. I know you have a lot of experience and expertise that you can share with us on this matter. Folks, we're coming back with Brigadier General Bob Dees. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
The best opinions. This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Now, if we don't do anything, he's going to have to make peace, but he's dealing with a very weak set of cards. If we sign, he's dealing with a very strong set of cards, and then he doesn't want to make peace. So that's where we are. It's very simple. I'm not looking to get into anything protracted. I want immediate peace. President Putin is going to want to make, and he wants to end it. And you saw what I saw today. This is a man that wants to get us signed up and keep fighting, and we're not doing that.
That, of course, President Trump giving a post-mortem on his discussion with President Zelensky, indicating that President Putin's looking to make a deal. President Zelensky purports that he's looking to make a deal, but doesn't really move forward on making a deal. I want to continue our discussion with Major General Bob Dees, retired from the United States Army. And, General, when we talk about this, I feel like whatever opinions people have of President Trump, all bombast and shtick aside, I think he's approaching this the right way. He's looking for peace. He's looking for it as quickly as possible. And it really seems like President Zelensky's not only dragging his feet, but almost not in it for the same reasons. Your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I was amazed at the president's interview there at the side of his helicopter. It was very logical. It was very simple. He basically analyzed it. He said, does he want peace? And it doesn't appear he wants peace. He wants to have U.S. largesse, but then he doesn't really want a ceasefire. That was one of the points of contention. He wants security guarantees, but if the United States is making a $500 billion deal with him, then that's a security guarantee in itself if we have that large of an investment in his country. I thought Trump was, I would almost say, brilliant. I know the left-stream media is probably lambasting him at this point in time, but I think he's taken the right approach. It's very similar to Reagan at Reykjavik when he refused to continue with Gorbachev at the time. And I would say that was one of the turning points that led to the downfall of the entire Soviet Union over Star Wars and all of that. And so Trump is, he is placing America's national interest first, which he ought to do. And he's not taking a bad deal. He's being very logical and reasonable with Zelensky. And Zelensky didn't have a good day. Frankly, Zelensky didn't read the room. He hasn't read the Congress. He met with a number of senators today, and he didn't listen to their advice by their account. So it was not a good day for him. Didn't read the room, was maybe clouded a bit by pride, arrogance, and reading his own press clippings.
Now, you mentioned that he met with some senators, and Senator Lindsey Graham made some comments today, and he's been a very outspoken critic of, supporter of Zelensky's and of funding the war, and almost incessantly funding the war to no end. I have a quick clip of that I'd like to share with you. Listen to this, General.
What I think, complete, utter disaster. I've been to Ukraine 8 or 9 times since the war started. I understand the consequences of Putin's actions against Ukraine. I appreciate what the Ukrainian people have done. They fought like tigers. At the end of the day, I was hoping that this minerals deal, which would be transformative in the relationship, would go over well. I talked to Zelensky this morning. Don't take the bait. President Trump was in a very good mood last night. Somebody asked me, am I embarrassed about Trump? I have never been more proud of the president. I was very proud of J.D. Vance, standing up for our country. We want to be helpful. What I saw in the Oval Office was disrespectful, and I don't know if we can ever do business with Zelensky again. I think most Americans saw a guy that they would not want to go in business with. The way he handled the meeting, the way he confronted the president, was just over the top. So I think the relationship between Ukraine and America is important, vitally important. But can Zelensky do a deal with the United States? After what I saw, I don't know.
Now, listen, if you're losing your buddies like Warhawk Lindsey Graham, and I'm not too far behind him in being a Warhawk, to be frank, I think you're in bad shape. And I got to say, whether Zelensky did this to Trump or whether he'd done it to Obama or Biden, I think I'd be equally as bothered because it really came across as cheap and wrong, General.
Yeah, I agree with you, Rich. As it turns out, we were with Lindsey Graham last night, and he was very optimistic, expressing the highest hopes for this meeting today. And as he said in that little sound clip you played, he met with Zelensky this morning. He counseled Zelensky on how to handle it. And so Lindsey Graham was all in trying to help him. And then this is the outcome. I agree with Senator Graham that the Ukrainian and American relationship is important. But I would also say that leadership makes a difference. And Zelensky may have lost his ability to truly lead and create confidence on the international stage. There are other talented leaders in Ukraine. I know personally of some in the Ukrainian military, senior officers that have the ability to lead and the ability to demonstrate integrity beyond the norm in Ukraine. So there are options, and I'm hopeful that this pause, if you will, of a relationship between the two countries or the two leaders might be temporary, but it might be with another Zelensky and another person instead of Zelensky.
You know, General, I'm glad you brought that up because I saw some clips earlier today of a member of the Ukrainian government, I think a parliament member, that was saying, you know, if we can't fix this problem, we may have to impeach Zelensky, or, you know, something the equivalent of that. And I thought, this is not good. Right? So if the Americans don't like you anymore, and Lindsey Graham put it well, this is not somebody any of us, I think, want to go into business with. So if the Americans are sour on him and the Ukrainians are equally getting sour on him, this puts them in a very untenable position, or at least him in a very untenable position. And if that's the case, this is where I guess we really, I need, you know, my naivete is at an all-time high, and you know, your expertise is valuable here. What happens militarily if President Trump says, you know what, I tried and I can't work with you, take care, and no money, no aid, no support, no nothing? They eventually, I'm guessing, Russia can turn to the people that they're working with, Iran, China, whomever's, you know, supporting them in their efforts to squash Ukraine. And Ukraine eventually looks like Gaza. That's how it works in my head. Do you think that's accurate, or am I reading it wrong?
Yeah, no, it's accurate. Ukraine is a much larger piece of terrain than Gaza, obviously, and so you're not talking days or weeks when there would be a catastrophic failure in Ukraine. But over time, it's just a meat grinder, as you know, and the Russians just keep pouring more and more people into that, and they don't seem to care about the fatalities and all that. So, yeah, you know, the outcome is predictable, very predictable, if there's not some type of agreement here to help Ukraine and really to get an agreement between Ukraine and Russia to stop the fighting. Impeachment, I don't know if that would happen or not. I think the Europeans are in a tough place right now because they have really sort of backed Zelensky wholeheartedly, and they, you know, they have to recognize that there's some validity to Trump's approach, even if they've been put on their heels recently by Trump and Vice President Vance. They have to recognize there's validity to the approach, and they may be backing the wrong man. So they've got a dilemma to look themselves in the mirror and see how they deal with Ukraine as well.
So ultimately, what's, you know, if you're the main man in charge giving advice to everybody here, what do you advise? If I could tell you, I would advise President Zelensky to go take a big slice of humble pie and eat some crow and come back tomorrow, maybe make an address to his people, apologize to everybody, and say, look, I want to come back to the table. You know, temperatures got a little high. I'm looking for a solution here. I'm really passionate to help my people, and let's make a deal. But short of that, I don't know that we can move forward.
Yeah, I think you'd be a good advisor to the president of Ukraine there, Rich. That would be excellent advice to have him do that. I don't think he's going to be able to come back immediately because it's going to take a while for the embers to cool off. But that would be a reasonable and a logical thing to do, and I think Trump would accommodate it. You know, Zelensky ought to come back and accept this deal, recognize that there's an immediate ceasefire that needs to go into place, and muster up some security that NATO and the United States will provide security guarantees that'll keep him from getting overrun or reinvaded by Russia. So that's the way we ought to go. Like I say, you ought to be the advisor, man.
Well, thank you, sir. Now, let me ask you, because ultimately, and I try to look at this from a lot of positions. Maybe you can tell me something I'm not seeing. But, excuse me. When I look at this, I think, okay, I don't think Trump's asking for a lot. And maybe that's my mistake when he says I want half of the mineral rights, which is the equivalent of $500 billion. We're in 300, so calculate some interest or whatever you want to do. I still don't think it's a ton of money, and it's if the outcome is ruin or mutiny, right? Because if you're saying people inside the military can do a better job, they're in my opinion, and again I could be wrong, they're bordering third world status. If it's not the first time we've seen a general take out a crazy president, because they're ruining the country. So
Right.
Why not try to make a deal? And I feel like he's guaranteed to fail if he stays on the track he's on. Why wouldn't he make a deal? And I know he keeps saying, sure, I'll give you whatever you want. Just put me in NATO. I think that's off the table. So what do you think he's trying to bargain for?
Yeah, well, I think we're having a hard time trying to figure out what he truly does want. It's not very logical. I agree with you. Trump's not asking for a lot. We all know by now, Zelensky ought to know that Trump is transactional. He's a business guy. He wrote The Art of the Deal. Key to a deal is a win-win proposition. The president has offered Zelensky a way to have a win, and for the U.S. to win as well. Trump said Zelensky's not holding many cards now, but if he makes this deal with us, he'll have a lot of cards in his hand, and then we'll be able to make this peace agreement. So there's not a lot of logic behind Zelensky's actions at this point, and I
really
do
not.
hope that
and
he
again,
decides to recant. Yeah.
Right. I'm totally with you. And I keep trying to play it in my head thinking, okay, so if I get into business with the United States and they own half of the mineral rights, which are in the ground, guess who's not bombing Ukraine ever? Anybody, right? Nobody's going to do that because you're messing with the U.S.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you sign up for that
Yeah.
deal? That's better than NATO.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah. I definitely agree. So, there's no logic to that. I go back to the notion of the criticism of Trump. I listened to some of the left-wing media for a short time here this afternoon, and they're just crucifying Trump, and their heads are exploding. And if they were to pause, take a deep breath, and figure out the logic of all of this, it's beyond me why they can't see the wisdom of this approach with Trump. It's almost like they think Zelensky's the president of the United States, and he ought to be honored as such.
Yeah, that's wild, but it's so well put. And I think oftentimes there's a lot of things I don't know, and in a situation like this, I think we don't know what we don't know, all of us. But what we do know is how this kind of ends up if we do the same thing. And it's, in my opinion, the definition of insanity, and it's not going to go well for them. And that's why I enlist the wisdom of those who know much more than me, like you, General. So Major General Bob Dees served 31 years in the United States Army all over, and a number of command positions. He now runs the National Center for Healthy Veterans in Virginia. Is the website healthyveterans.org, General?
It sure is, Rich, and appreciate it. We're looking for the people that are listening to refer veterans to our organization. We can help at-risk veterans, and we're always looking to help more. So if your people will reach out, that'd be great.
Outstanding. We definitely have a great veteran population that listens to the program. Healthyveterans.org is the website. Go check them out and see what how you can help a veteran, because they're here to help. They're not asking you for anything other than being able to help a veteran, and who doesn't want to help a veteran? Major General Bob Dees, I could talk to you for hours. You're a wealth of wisdom. I really appreciate you. Godspeed to you, sir. Talk again soon.
You too, Rich. Look forward to it. Take care.
You bet. God bless. Thank you. And amigos, we come back. Your calls and more. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
President Zelensky was in the White House today and had a real chance to sign an economic agreement that would have been great for the American people to recoup our tax dollars and great for the Ukrainian people to rebuild their country. And unfortunately, he blew the deal up in his own face.
That's Caroline Levitt saying Zelensky blew this up in his own face. But I don't know. Some people have a different opinion of that. Let's hit the phones. Let's go to Albany, New York. And check in with George. He's on WGDJ. George, go right ahead quickly.
Well, like I said, but all I was saying was you guys just putting my man down. Well, not my man, but you guys put him down just because he stood up to Trump. He's by himself, this and that, and he held his own with Russia for 3 years. I mean, the guy's doing what he can do, and Trump should be dogging right there. And Elon Musk is the one.
But what do you think? What do you think was wrong that Trump did?
No, he should have sympathy for the guy because the guy is by himself. I mean, as far as like he's a little guy, you guys are calling him a wimp.
Well, listen, I think you raise an interesting point, George. But sympathy for the guy, we've given him $300 million and he can't account for the money. So, I mean, it's great to have heart and to be the guy that's going out swinging. I get all that. But where's the $300 million that literally came out of your paycheck and mine?
Yes, but what I'm saying is Trump's like Biden. I mean, he's the president. We don't divide the country. I mean, he's divide the country. He's supposed to say, okay, well, Biden didn't see mine messed up. Don't be calling the guy a wimp. The guy's old. Trump ain't going to take Trump like right behind him. About 4 or 5 years right behind him. I'm just saying, boss. You guys are dogging the poor guy. He come over here, ask for a little help. Biden's the president.
Well, I don't think he's asking for a little help, George. I think he's asking for a lot of help. And I don't think he's even asking for the help. It's almost like he's demanding the help. And I think that was the problem. And again, I watched this thing, and when I watched it, he's there, and he makes a comment that kind of rubbed, J.D. Vance, the vice president, the wrong way, and he called him out and said, look, I think, what you're doing is disrespectful. And instead of saying, oh, look, my bad, I'm in your house, I don't mean to disrespect you, I'm trying to do whatever, he kind of doubles down with J.D. Vance, and in the process says, you don't know what it's like to be in war, but you will soon. In the future, you will know. And Trump says, you don't know that. What do you mean in the future we'll know? As if it was a threat. Now, I don't, you sound like a New Yorker like me. I think if somebody tells me you don't know about that now, but you're about to know about it real soon, that sounds like fighting words to me. So I think Trump decided to just call him out and say, look, slow your roll. You don't really know. You don't really know what we're going to go through in the future. You can't say that we're going to be at war in the future. And then he starts to backtrack saying, look, God bless, God bless, God bless. And he gets into this whole thing. Now, I get your point, George. I do. That, we should, he's holding down his country against Putin. Listen, I agree. And I think that's why we've been giving him $100 billion a year for the last 3 years. But it comes to a point where we have to get paid. And this is where he's kind of getting sketchy and dodging. So I appreciate your point. Folks, we're coming right back. Your calls and more. 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. Rich Valdez live with you. Well, I don't know, that's it. The music means they're kicking me out of here. Jeez Louise. Anyway, I do really appreciate that call because I know a lot of people are out there rooting for Ukraine. And listen, I'm rooting for Ukraine. I want to see them flourish. I want to see them win. I just don't want to see Zelensky come here and disrespect our White House or our people. Hasta la próxima. Take care. God bless you and good night, America. I'm Rich Valdez.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez. America's favorite late night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to the Friday night edition of the program. We are live, we're national, and I'm looking forward to speaking with you guys on open phones across America. So give us a call, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. And, of course, it was hot, getting hot in here, as the song goes. President Zelensky visiting the White House today, and man, it was very contentious, to say the least. Very, very contentious. Make sure you check out the interview with General Bob Dees, Major General retired from the United States Army, who is the Vice Director of the Office of Interoperability in the Department of Defense, weighing in on this conversation and some of the potential fallout. So keep it locked for that. Please check that out. And lots of things going on here, right? President Zelensky saying he's not sorry because he doesn't think he did anything bad. Number one. Number two, you've got Pete Hegseth saying military strikes on Mexican fentanyl labs are on the table. I think that's fantastic. That's why I think Mexico's saying, all right, we're looking to make a deal. We might be willing to get you some of the cartel bad guys, as opposed to, getting into a conflict like this. Elon Musk is defending the Attorney General of the United States, despite the critics. People are saying, what's going on? I'm not seeing enough, blah, blah, blah. And one of my favorites, or I should say one of my least favorites, Jasmine Crockett. She claims that Trump is weaponizing the DOJ after Democrats did just that to him. So anyway, we are going to continue our conversation. There's a lot to discuss. Of course, the big story of the day, Zelensky visiting the White House. And I know a lot of people are saying he got thrown out. I think ultimately Trump just said, look, I think we've heard enough. I don't think he was throwing him out. I think he was leaving. I think Trump was leaving. He was walking away. But apparently Zelensky did leave. He didn't say anything to the press on his way out. And there was a lunch that was served. And apparently the White House staff enjoyed Zelensky's lunch. So they literally ate his lunch. Now, as much as, the partisan in me likes to say things like that, and I like the fact that this, that they let a lot off their chest here. Both Vice President J.D. Vance and Speaker, President Trump speaking the truth here. Ultimately, I would have really loved to see them sign a deal, right? I really would. I would really have appreciated that. And President Trump, I think, put it best when he said his hope is that he would be remembered as a peacemaker. Listen to President Trump with President Zelensky in the White House today.
I hope I'm going to be remembered as a peacemaker. This would be a great thing if we could do this. I'm doing this to save lives more than anything else. Second is to save a lot of money, but I consider that to be far less important. So I hope I'm going to thank you, Brian, for that question. It was a nice question. I hope I'll be known and recognized as a peacemaker. This would be a great thing to solve. This is a very dangerous situation. This could lead to a third world war. This was headed in the wrong direction. If this election were lost, if we didn't win this election, and by the way, we won it by a lot. That was a mandate. We won every swing state. We won the popular vote by millions and millions of votes. We won everything. The districts, you look at the areas of red, take a look at a map. This was a big mandate, and this was one of the things I said, we're going to get this thing settled. If we didn't win, I think this could have very well ended up in a third world war.
I think Trump is spot on there. And again, I'm sure by now you've heard this clip, but I would be remiss if I didn't give you a chance to hear it again, at least part of it, because this exchange between Vice President Vance, who is, trading barbs, going at it with President Zelensky, basically telling him, look, I think what you're doing is disrespectful, and, calling him out. And again, I'm reading the body language on this. And ultimately, these guys were looking to make a deal about rare earth minerals. And Zelensky starts talking about, have you ever been to Ukraine? You don't know what it's like, but you will soon. You'll know what it's like to be at war. And that, I think, is what got him into trouble. And I'll play that clip for you. I promise I will. But right now, I want you to hear when President Trump continued fielding questions. And one of the questions was with respect to the deal and what we'll do with the money and what we'll do with the minerals. And it's a well-thought-out deal. Number 5, listen to this.
With the, how much money is the U.S. going to put into the fund that is being created today, and how does this provide long-term security for Ukraine?
Well, we don't know exactly how much because we're going to be putting some money in a fund that we're going to get from the raw earth that we're going to be taking and sharing in terms of revenue. So it's going to be a lot of money will be made from the sale and from the use of raw earth. And as you know, our country doesn't have much raw earth. We have a lot of oil and gas, but we don't have a lot of the raw earth. And what we do have is protected by the environmentalists, but that can be unprotected. But still, it's not very much. They have among the best in the world in terms of raw earth. So we're going to be using that, taking it, using it for all of the things we do, including AI and including weapons and the military. And it's really going to very much satisfy our needs. So it's something that just worked out really well. We have a lot of oil and we have a lot of gas. We have a lot, but we don't have raw earth. So this has just about every component of the raw earth that we need for computers, for all of the things we do. This puts us in great shape.
Win-win, right? Win for them, win for us, sounds like. But he wasn't willing. Of course, President Zelensky wasn't feeling this at all. He wanted to get into this back and forth. So I'm going to get into that in a little bit because I want to have a conversation about that with one of my buddies from New York, Professor Nick Giordano, Professor of Political Science, and he's coming up next. So keep it locked right here.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
I want to listen to you, Rich, all the time.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you are
Mr.
not
President,
strong...
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come into the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media. Right now, you guys are going around and forcing conscripts to the front lines because you have manpower problems. You should be thanking the President for trying to bring an end to this conflict.
Have you ever been to Ukraine that you say what problems we have?
I have been to.
Come once.
I've actually watched and seen the stories, and I know what happens is you bring people, you bring them on a propaganda tour, Mr. President. Do you disagree that you've had problems bringing people into your military?
We have problems.
And do you think that it's respectful to come to the Oval Office of the United States of America and attack the administration that is trying to prevent the destruction of your country?
A lot of questions. Let's start from the beginning.
Sure.
First of all, during the war, everybody has problems. Even you, but you have nice ocean and don't feel now, but you will feel it in the future. God bless.
You don't know that.
God bless.
You don't
God
know
bless.
That.
You will not have a war.
Don't tell us what we're going to feel. We're trying to solve a problem. Don't tell us what we're going to feel.
I'm not telling you.
Because
I'm
you're in no
answering
position
on
to
this
dictate that.
That's
Remember
exactly
this.
what
I'm not
You're in
dictating.
no position to dictate what we're going to feel. We're going to feel very good.
You will feel influence.
We're going to feel very good and very strong.
You will feel influence.
You're right now not in a very good position. You've allowed yourself to be in a very bad position, and he happens to be right about it.
From the very beginning of the war,
You're not in a good position.
I
You don't have the cards right now. With us, you start having
not playing
cards.
cards.
But right now, you don't.
I'm very
You're playing
serious,
cards.
Mr. President.
You're
I'm
playing
very
cards.
serious.
You're gambling
I'm
with the
president
lives
in
of
war.
millions of people.
You think-
You're gambling with World War III.
What are you
You're
thinking
gambling
about?
with
What are you
World
thinking
War
about?
III. And
You-
what you're doing is very disrespectful to the country, this country. That's
with
back
all
to
respect to
you.
your
Far
country.
more than a lot of people said
very
they
respect.
should have.
Have you said thank you once?
A lot
entire
of
meeting?
times.
No, in this
Even
entire meeting,
today.
have you said thank
Even
you?
today.
You went to Pennsylvania and campaigned for the opposition in October. Offer some words of appreciation for the United States
what
of
are you speaking
America
about?
and the president who's trying to save your country.
Well, there you go. That's just a clip of what went on with Vice President Vance, President Trump, and President Zelensky in the Oval Office today. And it was getting hot in her. I want to get some reaction to that, and we're going to talk about DEI and college campuses and all of that fun stuff with Professor Nick Giordano, Professor of Political Science at Suffolk Community College. He's host of the PAS Report podcast, and he is the Campus Reform Higher Education Fellow joining us this evening. Professor, welcome.
Always a pleasure, Rich.
Yes, sir. Likewise. And what's your initial reaction? I got to tell you, I was surprised. I usually say I'm not surprised, but this I did not expect to see this shootout at the OK Corral. I really thought Zelensky was going to begrudgingly sign a deal today, and we were going to own half the mineral rights in Ukraine. And here we have this guy, President Zelensky, pushing closer and closer to alienating himself from any protection by the United States and getting into a world of hurt with Putin.
You know, there's been plenty of times where I said I wish I could be a fly on the wall in an administrator's meeting with other foreign leaders. Well, now we're the fly on the wall. It's amazing. Listen, from a political science perspective, this is definitely goes into an example I will bring into my class when I talk about diplomacy and the rules to conduct effective diplomacy, because it was a diplomatic failure 101. You don't bite the hand that feeds you. You come in, you act gracious. It was something that was actually shocking, especially when you look at the body language. You know, he posed a question to Vice President Vance, and then Vance didn't even open his mouth, and Zelensky looked agitated. He looked angry. He crossed his arms.
Yeah.
It was very combative, and it was just bizarre, too, right? I mean, for 40 minutes, everything was going just fine, and then it just went off the rails. And you have to be able to realize and read the room. You're sitting with the President of the United States, the country that has provided enormous support, and so you need to tread lightly. So this was a huge screw-up by him. I do think it will be resolved fairly quickly. I do think that behind the scenes, there's a lot of people putting pressure on Zelensky to just come out and apologize. But this was a big mistake on his part, because he was already being alienated. You look at the public opinion polls. When Russia first invaded Ukraine, it was about 65% of the American people supported Ukraine's efforts in providing them with funding and military. Those numbers have completely reversed itself. And Zelensky can be a little antagonistic. I mean, you know, under the Biden administration, there was a couple of reports of Biden snapping at Zelensky for making so many demands and the way he would make those demands. Where he didn't seem grateful. He didn't seem appreciative. But I think there's a bigger issue going on. And what we see in the public forum is that people don't think critically anymore. You know, it's either everyone's driven by emotions. Either you have to do anything you can to support Ukraine because they have to defeat Russia, or if you sit there and try and negotiate some sort of peace, then somehow you're an appeaser. And this is the problem in our society today. This is a complicated issue, but we have to be honest that there is only one realistic way Ukraine actually wins this war, and that would be America providing military boots on the ground in a kinetic war style fashion. You could also just keep funding Ukraine, and we're going to see the same thing. Russia was always the bigger, more dominant country. Inch by inch, they keep on gaining on the battlefield. And so you could supply them with all the money and weapons you want. But the average soldier in Ukraine, when the war first started, was 30 years old. Today, it's 43 years old. So at what point, how much time does the Ukrainian military have left? Or the final solution is that you force an agreement between the two countries, Russia and Ukraine, and you reintroduce stability back into the international arena. And I think there's too many people that it's all or nothing approach. You either go all in to support Zelensky in Ukraine, but you're not going to provide them their troops, or you do nothing and let Ukraine collapse, where I think it's much more complicated than that.
Really, really well put. So how do we, I guess, what's your advice? My advice is to Zelensky, you need to make it right, say you're sorry, be more apologetic. You're coming hat in hand, play the part right. What do you say?
I agree with you there, and I think that people need to realize not everything needs to be stated overtly. So we're talking a lot about the mineral mines that exist inside the Ukraine. I mean, the reality is that if we get control of those mines, it reduces our reliance on China for them, but it also increases our economic interests in Ukraine. We have to have a presence then in Ukraine to protect our economic interests. And what people don't see is they say, well, if you make a deal with Putin, well, he's just going to reinvade in a few years. He'll break the agreement. Well, if America has a presence there, it's going to be much less likely that Vladimir Putin decides he's going to invade, because if something happens to Americans on the ground in Ukraine, that's going to be a big problem for Russia. In addition, 40% of the mineral mines actually exist in the eastern province. Russia currently controls the eastern province. So Trump, you could tell, wants to secure this deal before he heads into negotiations with Putin and Zelensky together to say, hey, listen, Putin, these are our mines. These aren't Ukraine's mines. These are our mines, and we want them. And that would push Russia out further, push them back. It doesn't mean that Russia is not going to get pieces of Ukrainian territory. But what amazes me is that Zelensky didn't see. He was complaining about security guarantees. Well, if you would have just signed the deal today and been quiet about it, that's your security guarantee right there. But he didn't see it.
Yeah, sadly, he didn't see it. I wish he would have. I think it would have been a good deal for them. And honestly, today I think.
Well, did you see the Ukrainian ambassador?
With her face palming herself.
Yeah.
She was so dismayed and shocked and appalled. And I don't think it was at President Trump. I think she was like, I can't believe this man is here doing this. I was embarrassed for him, too. I mean, I think he really screwed up today. But yet, Christiana Amanpour and her friends in the left-wing media, they were taken aback and, asking the question, whose side is Trump on? Russia's or Ukraine's? I'm thinking, he's on my side, the United States. What's wrong with you, Christian? Anyway, we'll hear from them on the other side.
Not only that, when you look at all those people and you look at the John Boltons of the world and everyone, I have to ask, what is their solution? They're constantly saying that we have to push back against Putin and fight against Putin. But you notice they never lay out clear, concrete plans of what do they want the end game to look like, and what are they willing to contribute? What should the United States contribute to make that happen? But they never say that. And what people don't see out there is that the failed foreign policy experts for the last 30 years, they have been pushing this, and they've caused Ukraine. Ukraine has been the one to pay the price because of their logic.
Professor Nick, hang on right there. We're coming right back. Amigos, we're going to continue this discussion on Ukraine with Professor Nick Giordano straight ahead, plus your calls, 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez. Don't go anywhere.
Mr. Call Screener, who is a budding radio star, by the way. Richie Valdez is terrific.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Never in the history of modern diplomacy, war, peace, whatever, have I ever seen anything like it. Look, from a European and an overseas perspective, what seemed to have happened was this very strange new White House way of having these long and lengthy Oval Office sprays with the press where they do talk for a long time. It's not usual. This is, an accident waiting to happen. You saw the Zelensky handshake as he met with President Trump at the portico. He was incredibly tense. Zelensky's body language, very tense, knew everything that was riding on this meeting. Zelensky's main aim, as he said himself, but I want to ask what the US is prepared to do going forward. And perhaps I need to ask, whose side is the Trump administration on, Ukraine's or Putin's? And I think what you saw in that meeting was much more of the United States administration, the president and the vice president, taking all the Putin talking points.
That, of course, Christiane Amanpour from CNN. Just, I guess it's wrong to say she has her panties in a bunch, so I won't say that. I will say she's in an uproar, and I want to get some reaction to that from our guest, political science professor at Suffolk Community College, Nick Giordano. What do you think about what's going on with the meltdown at CNN?
Well, first of all, her words were very revealing. I mean, she stated that it's very rare that these things go on for so long, and it's a train wreck waiting to happen. And maybe that's the problem, that everything is usually so carefully scripted, it's so choreographed that we don't actually see the truth. Maybe this was a way of seeing the ugly truth about politics. Politics is an ugly sport. We have to understand that. And, we've seen a lot of the script, and it hasn't played out so well, so maybe we need, as a public, to see what really goes on. It was Shakespeare that said all of politics is theater. And I think you look at what Christina Amanpour said, and it's true. The second thing is she's talking about that this plays more into Russia. I'm still confused of how, if the United States has mineral mines inside Ukraine and we have a presence inside Ukraine, how that plays into Vladimir Putin and Russia, how that makes us closer to Russia. Because I would think that's one of the last things that Vladimir Putin wants. I mean, one of the whole reasons he invaded Ukraine was because of the threat of NATO. The idea that the strongest, most powerful military is right next door is probably not the best for Vladimir Putin. So it really doesn't play into his hands the way I see it. But again, this is part of international politics. And I think that Zelensky, he overplayed his hand. I think that he needed to control himself. He wasn't able to. He couldn't keep himself in check. And he didn't realize that he's dealing with a different type of president. And it's a little surprising because he's dealt with president from 2017 to 2021. But again, he thought he could come in making demands, and he doesn't realize that the situation has changed.
Now, have you heard reports about a possible impeachment of Zelensky? I've heard that there are some people back in Ukraine that didn't like what they saw and right away started saying, we got to get rid of this guy.
Well, I don't know what the Ukrainian constitution says about removing the sitting president and the impeachment process. What I do know is there have been rumblings of internally within Zelensky's own camp, in fact, with a former general of his, that they're unhappy with his leadership, that it's gone to his head, the power. But again, that's internal Ukrainian politics. Who knows what's true? Who knows what's not? Ukraine, despite everyone talking about, the idea of a democracy, there are power plays that go on in Ukraine. It's not as free as some of our leaders here want to make it out to be. And how the Ukrainian politics plays out over the course of the next week after this incident, I can't answer that question.
Yeah, well, I'd love to speculate because I think it's interesting, right? I'm wondering, does he see all of this happening, or do you think it's just power gone to his head, where he's thinking, I'm going to go there, and I really do think part of this is lost on him, right? He really seems like ignorance is bliss type of thing. He doesn't know what he doesn't know.
Power is intoxicating, and a lot of leaders get drunk with it, and they get overambitious, and again, they make mistakes. I mean, hubris can be the downfall of a person, of an individual, or an entire nation, and so that's why you constantly have to guard against it. It's why I'm so outspoken against the people that have been running our foreign policy for the last 30 years, because their hubris has made the United States weaker. Their hubris of thinking that it's our job to spread democracy all over the world led to 20 years of war in Afghanistan, and the Taliban was able to recapture the country in an entire week. It was our hubris that the Istanbul Agreement between Zelensky and Putin in May of 2022, 3 months after the war started, was torpedoed. The Biden administration had it torpedoed, sent Boris Johnson, the United Kingdom Prime Minister, to Zelensky to threaten him. If he signs on to this agreement, then we're going to cut off all support. So I think it's hubris like that that has led to Ukraine's pain and suffering. They could have limited their losses when they were having successes on the battlefield. Now Ukraine's in a position of weakness.
Yeah, I think you're spot on there. Folks, we're on with Professor Nick Giordano, Professor of Political Science at Suffolk Community College. He's also the Campus Reform Higher Education Fellow, and we're going to talk about some DEI policies. But before we transition to that, I want you to hear this clip. President Trump, President Zelensky, and J.D. Vance. Check this out.
Please, you think that if you will speak very loudly about the war,
He's not speaking loudly. He's not speaking loudly. Your country's in big trouble.
Can I
Wait a
answer?
minute. No.
Can
You've
I
done a lot
answer?
of talking. Your country is in big trouble.
I know.
You're not winning.
I know.
You're not winning this. You have a damn good chance of coming out okay because of us.
Mr. President, we are staying in our country, staying strong from the very beginning of the war. We've been alone, and we are thankful. I said thanks
You haven't
in
been
this
alone.
cabinet.
You
and
haven't
not
been
only
alone.
in this
We
cabinet.
gave you, through
I
this
said
stupid president, $350 billion.
You voted
we gave
for
you
your
military
president.
equipment,
You
and you
voted
men
for
are
your
brave, but they had to use our military.
What about
If you didn't have
You
our
invited
military
me-
equipment,
You invited
if
me
you
to
didn't
speak.
have our military equipment, this war would have been over in 2 weeks.
In 3
okay?
days, I heard it from Putin. In 3 days, this is something
Maybe
new.
less.
In 2 weeks, of course, yes.
It's going to be a very hard thing to do business like this. I
Again,
tell you.
just say thank you.
I said a lot of times thank you to American people.
Accept that there are disagreements, and let's go litigate those disagreements rather than trying to fight it out in the American media when you're wrong. We know that you're wrong.
But you see, I think it's good for the American people to see what's going on.
I understand, sir.
I think it's
I
very
understand.
important. That's why I kept this going so long.
And again, part of what Christiane Amanpour was talking about, Trump reveals there, saying, hey, look, I want people to see what's going on. Now, Professor Nick, I had a caller a little while ago who said that we were beating up on Zelensky, and the bottom line is it was a 2-on-1, and that Zelensky held his own. Do you think that this is the common perception? I hear a lot of frustrated people. It strikes me as everybody's very frustrated. And I think Zelensky is in over his head, both conceptually and honestly, in terms of his command of English. While his English is way better than my Ukrainian, I don't know that he's able to express himself as adequately as he'd like. Your thoughts?
I think that there's truth to that. I mean, listen, there's a language barrier. There's no doubt about it. And so maybe he's taking things a certain way that he may be taking them personally, or maybe he's trying to think of what he wants to say in his head, but it's not coming out right because of the English translation.
Right.
You know, it's one of those things. But when we look at diplomacy in general, he should have been better prepared to go into this meeting and to be able to answer questions from the press, and to be able to just sit there and turn to J.D. Vance and say, you know, we do thank you, Mr. Vice President, Mr. President. We thank America because we know that without your leadership, we would be in far more trouble today. That's it. A simple acknowledgement would have gone a long way. And that's what you have to realize. You know, there are rules for effective diplomacy that exist. You have to understand where the other side is coming from. You have to watch what you say. You have to watch your body language. You have to be able to stand by what you say, and you have to have the power to actually do what you say you're going to do. And one of the things that's critical is trying to understand Trump. Trump is notorious for the statement, you got to know when to walk away, right? I mean, he saw when Reagan walked away from Gorbachev, and then, a month later, Gorbachev called and said, all right, let's get back together and figure this out. You have to know when to walk away in diplomacy. And I think that this is one of those things where Trump says, well, we're going to walk away now, and he's waiting for Zelensky to come back to him.
Yeah, I think you're right. And so am I. And I'm hoping that Zelensky comes in a little bit more humble manner. And I understand.
I don't think he has a choice, to be honest with you.
Well, that's my
and it's not a competition of, like, you know,
who wins,
who
right.
won up and who didn't. You know, maybe it would have been better behind the scenes, but it happened publicly, and so you have to deal with it.
Yeah, 100%. Now, amigos, we're going to continue the conversation straight ahead with Professor Nick Giordano, Higher Education Fellow at Campus Reform. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Pulling the plug on diversity programs. It's the new guidance from the Trump administration in schools and colleges across the U.S.
There's a lot of concern about what does this mean? How could we be so devalued?
The directive came in the form of a letter on February 14th, giving schools 2 weeks to end policies that treat students differently based on race or risk losing federal funding. But Connecticut Education Association President Kate Dees says the instruction is not a mandate.
The federal government actually does not have legal standing to tell local administrations they have to disband those efforts, because those are efforts that are dictated by local board policy, which supersede sort of federal rhetoric.
The Connecticut Board of Education backs up that claim. It sent a letter of its own Wednesday night informing schools that federal funding cannot be terminated without a multi-step legal process involving a hearing. Bridget Bjorlo, Fox 61.
So that's what's going on with DEI. And again, these lawsuits abound, and people are pushing back against the Trump administration's directive to swing the hatchet at DEI. I want to get to the bottom of it with Professor Nick Giordano, Professor of Political Science at Suffolk County Community College. He's host of the PAS Report podcast, and he is the Higher Education Fellow over at Campus Reform. Professor Nick Giordano, what do you think of this DEI?
Well, campusreform.org has been on top of DEI from the beginning, and hope will be here till the end of it. And it was always assumed that the woke mobs wouldn't go down without a fight. So everyone anticipated that there would be some pushback. And listen, the way to target DEI is to cut off the funding. That's it. It actually is relatively simple. If you cut the funding, these institutions need that funding to survive. I mean, the amount of grant money that's flowing from the federal government to the state and local institutions is huge. When they say that the federal government doesn't have the authority, the executive branch doesn't have the authority to do that, they actually do, because we've seen that diversity, equity, inclusion creates racism. It creates targeting people that are not aligned in your group. It creates the others, right? And that's what we see. I mean, all you have to do is look at Barnard College and Columbia University and see how Jewish people are being targeted with anti-Semitism. And you look at colleges throughout the country. The University of Michigan trying to rebrand it. They're trying to get cute. They're now calling it the Office of Common Culture as opposed to Diversity, Equity, Inclusion. But you see those things taking place, and it really, they're trying to undermine the administration. But at the end of the day, the American people are the ones that rejected DEI. The American people don't like to be divided up into groups, oppressors versus oppressed, victimizers versus victims. The American people are the ones that have pushed back. They're tired of the nonsense of being divided along every single line, and they don't want to be treated, the most open and tolerant generation especially, doesn't want to be treated as if they're the biggest racist to exist. So I think it's only a matter of time before the DEI collapses on itself. Now, it is complicated, right? So in New York State, my state, we have DEI degree requirements at the college level. And so how does that impact with the federal grant funding that flows into SUNY institutions? It's going to be a very complicated, ugly process. There are going to be court battles, and it is going to be challenged. But we have to stay on top of these universities, and we have to call them out. We can't allow them to just reshift the names and some letters around, even though the DEI is pushing the same thing. Because let's be honest out there, DEI is a political agenda. Okay, it's about social justice, and it is those that believe in this woke ideology that determine what the right positions are on the issues. And if you deviate from those positions, you're labeled as an adversary. That's why they use you're either an ally of us, and if you're not an ally, that means you're an adversary. So this is a political agenda to push a political point of view. It's not about academic integrity. It's not about intellectual curiosity. It's not about shaping the young minds of the future so that they could think critically and solve problems and contribute to our society. It's about pushing a political narrative on them and getting them to be part of that group. So I cannot wait for DEI to be destroyed.
Folks, if you want to hear more about Professor Nick Giordano's work with Campus Reform as higher education fellow, go to campusreform.org and check out his latest piece. And Professor Nick Giordano, let everybody know how they can follow you online and learn more about your program.
Well, everyone can follow Campus Reform at Campus Reform. Make it nice and easy for everyone out there. And they can follow me at PAS Report. So those are the two best ways to follow us. You'll see all the articles being pumped out. We keep everyone alert as to what's going on the college campuses, higher education, and there's a reason. We are fighting for the minds of the future. We actually believe that the students of today are the leaders of tomorrow, and we want to produce leaders that actually love the country, that understand the principles of limited government, that understand the principles of liberty and freedom and merit and hard work, all the things that have made America such an exceptional nation.
Outstanding. Professor Nick Giordano, you're a gentleman, a scholar, and a patriot. I appreciate you being here, brother. God bless.
Anytime, Rich. Thanks so much.
You got it, brother. And folks, your calls are coming up right now. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. No hair, no care, and live on the air, it's Rich Valdez.
He's got to say, I want to make peace. He doesn't have to stand there and say about Putin this, Putin that, and all negative things. He's got to say, I want to make peace. I don't want to fight a war any longer. His people are dying. He doesn't have the cards, just so you understand it, okay? I can tell you.
And to the phones we go. He doesn't have the cards. Let me see. Where do we go? We go to... We're going to go to Nick, Chicago, Illinois, WLS. Go right ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much. Always a very nice show. My father is Ukrainian. My mother's Polish from Western Ukraine. They both lived through Stalin's famine against Ukraine. Millions died. And it was punishment then to hurt Ukraine and keep them from becoming independent of the communist USSR, of which they were going to run out of time. Okay. Volodymyr Zelensky should have brought up, since J.D. Vance was there, that Mr. Vice President, you should have, you once stated that you don't care either way about what happens with Ukraine.
All right, Nick, I'm not sure I got it. But, folks, we're going to come back with the rest of your calls and more. Keep them really sharp, really to the point. You're not going to have that much time. Don't go anywhere, folks. We continue with open phones across America, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez. America's favorite late night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. And happy to be here with you. We're live, we're national. It's 11 p.m. Eastern Time, 11:07 to be exact. And we're going to be taking your calls, open phones across America. I'm trying to get as many calls in as I can this hour because, well, I want to hear from you. Lots going on. Busiest news day of the week, and it's Friday. Usually we get to let our hair down and talk about everything, but lots and lots and lots to discuss. Now, of course, big story of the day, President Volodymyr Zelensky showing up at the White House without a tie, without a jacket, and without a ton of humility, and coming with a little bit of a chip on his shoulder. Didn't go great with President Trump, didn't go great with Vice President Vance. I've got a little bit of that exchange where Trump is reiterating to him, now for the second or third time, you are not holding the cards here. Listen to this.
You have to be thankful. You don't have the cards. You're buried there. Your people are dying. You're running low on soldiers. Listen, you're running low on soldiers. It would be a damn good thing. And then you tell us, I don't want a ceasefire. I don't want a ceasefire. I want to go, and I wanted this. Look, if you could get a ceasefire right now, I tell you, you'd take it so the bullets stop flying and your men stop getting killed.
Of course, we want to stop the war.
But you're saying you don't want a ceasefire.
But I said to you,
I want a ceasefire.
With guarantees.
Because you'll get a ceasefire faster than an agreement.
Ask our people about ceasefire, what they think.
That wasn't with me.
For you what
that wasn't with me. That was with a guy named Biden, who was not a smart person. That was with Obama.
It was your president.
Excuse me. That was with Obama, who gave you sheets, and I gave you javelins.
Yes.
I gave you the javelins to take out all those tanks. Obama gave you sheets. In fact, the statement is Obama gave sheets and Trump gave javelins. You got to be more thankful, because let me tell you, you don't have the cards. With us, you have the cards. But without us, you don't have any cards.
Trump went on to tell him, listen, you're a tough guy because we've enabled you to be a tough guy. Now, I think he was, I really do believe that he was somewhat humbled by this this exchange, but somewhat, and on the lower side of somewhat. But some of you have different opinions on that. So I want to go to Larry, Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, calling us from WRNN. Larry, your thoughts?
Yeah, you got to look at this. You know, you got a guy he's under a lot of pressure. He's been fighting a war for 3 years. And to hold off the Russian army, he's doing better than the Germans in World War II. I think I voted for Trump and all that. I'm a Republican, but it just didn't look good on Trump's part. He kind of went off the handle. The guy can't speak the greatest English. He's probably misunderstood. And then you got a guy asking him about his clothes. You know what I mean? It's like you said he's going to.
I really don't. I thought it was a tremendously disrespectful thing to show up at the White House. I have a friend who was a cameraman for CNN years ago, and his tie was loose. He was wearing a tie, but it was loose. And the president at the time was George W. Bush, and he stopped by and he said hello. And he said, "Hey, welcome to the White House." And he said, "Oh, Mr. President, thank you. You know, I'm here with whatever CNN. We're shooting your interview." And he said, "Good, well, welcome." And he said, "Tighten up that tie. You're in the White House, son." I would never imagine, I try not to even go on TV without wearing a tie unless it's a weekend, but I'll definitely put on a jacket for sure. So, I guess call me old school or petty or whatever you want, but I don't really feel like I'm in the business of having to give Mr. Zelensky any credit for anything. I don't care how he does against the Russians. I want him to win. I want his people to live. I want the Russians to live. I want everyone to not die. But ultimately, my interest is with the American people, our tax dollars, our sovereignty, our strength, our security, our safety. And I think President Trump today represented those things. I mean, obviously, you have a different opinion, and then that's fine. But ultimately, this man is of no consequence, right? I think all any U.S. president has to do if they get tired of this little game is stop playing it. You stop playing the game. You leave him to fend for himself. You say he's done really well holding off the army for the last 3 years to the tune of $350 billion from the United States in arms and aid and even technical assistance from having our troops on the ground there guiding these guys. So for sure, they're doing well because of the United States. I'm not, if I was a bad guy, I would say I'd be curious to see how well they do without our support. But I know that that's a death wish. No way that they can fend. It has nothing to do with the bravery of the Ukrainian men and women in their armed forces. Has everything to do with the reality. Russia's a big entity. And they've got a lot. And they seem to have an unlimited amount of manpower that they can just keep putting men out there that are willing to die. And right now, everybody that's fighting for Ukraine has been drafted. Vice President J.D. Vance bringing that to the attention of many, saying, right now your front lines are comprised entirely of conscripts. They've run out of enlisted soldiers. Everybody is drafted. This is a bad situation, and I think Trump was trying to impress that upon him. I guess my view is slightly different in that I think President Zelensky is going in there, as a wartime president, trying to impress upon whomever's listening, we're fighting for our lives. And that's grand, sir. It really is. But it's not what we're here for. We were here today to make a deal so that the United States could reap some of the benefit of the mineral rights in Ukraine so that we could get money back, right? Because he said, why don't you pay us back? He said, I didn't know how to pay it back. And it's a back and forth. So ultimately, I was hoping that we would get a deal. Instead, we got an argument and a meltdown. But always good to hear differing views. I appreciate it. Larry in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, WRNN. And my thinking that we have to continue to honor the Budapest Memorandum of Security Assurances, right? This is the United States making a deal, 30 years ago, saying, look, get rid of your nukes to Ukraine, get rid of your nukes, and we will protect you against Russia. And ultimately, the problem there is people are interpreting what protect you against Russia means. And some saying that it means giving you weapons. Others think of it as we'll give you blankets. Others think it means giving you $100 billion a year for 3 years. All I can say is I like Trump's approach. Let's stop the killing and let's make some money. And continue to live and have our conversation and listen to the radio and listen to our podcasts and go on life nicely without people dying left and right. Because if you're like me, you probably love talk radio. You love podcasts. You love the news. And there's a radio out there that I want to recommend to you, the C. Crane Radio 3. It delivers exceptional spoken word audio. The clarity on this, it makes it feel like me, your favorite host, is right there in the room with you. And this, I think, makes it really cool because you can separate the bass and the treble controls so you can tune the sound exactly how you want it to hear and to make it sound. And the CC Radio 3, it also pulls in long-range AM and FM stations with exceptional reception. It also includes emergency features like NOAA weather and a 2-meter ham band. This is a big deal because it runs on both the power cord that it comes with and a set of batteries that give you over 170 hours. So this is reliable no matter where you are. Now, the CC Radio 3 is also considered by many the almost everything radio. So you can listen to your favorite radio stations or connect with a Bluetooth to stream whatever you want, right? You can listen to an immense palette of different content from any smartphone or from any smart speaker. What do you got to do to get one? Just order it. Order the CC Radio 3. Give them a call at C. Crane. They have a U.S.-based customer service number, and I'm going to give it to you right now. It's 800-522-8863, 800-522-8863, or go to the website. Visit ccrane.com/rich. That's CCRANE.com/rich. DEES.com/rich, RICH, and use my name, code RICH, at the checkout for 10% off any order that's over $75.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
You have experience and skills in interviewing, or you wouldn't be on your program.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. And I want to talk about something that I think is important to a lot of people. Earlier, I mentioned our conversation with Major General Bob Dees. And I think when we talk about the military, it's always important to remember that they're out there and they're fighting the good fight and in service to our nation. And those that serve come home, and it's not always pretty. It's not always easy. And I know a little bit about this in my own family. My brother Bobby served in the Marine Corps, and he came home and he dealt with a lot of things. He did well in business, but eventually he had a brain aneurysm 2 years ago, and he's not with us anymore. And it opens up a conversation around things where you think to yourself, what was going on? What was in their mind? What were they thinking? What were they feeling? What were they dealing with? What were these stressors or the pressure that sometimes goes unspoken? And that's just a little bit about my family, but I know this happens to a lot of people, especially those that were combat veterans that served overseas and come home and they're dealing with PTSD and so many other things. And my predecessor, the late great Jim Bohannon, was a veteran, and he was always big on making sure that this program supports veterans, and I stand by that commitment because I think it's important. And it's important for us to realize that the rate of suicide of veterans and quite frankly a lot of first responders as well is too high, and there is no, in my opinion, acceptable number, right? But anything that we can do to raise awareness and to let people know about different resources and programs and services that are available, we're doing it. And that being said, I want to introduce you to the First There Foundation. Eric Lionheart is president of the First There Foundation, and he's with us now. Eric Lionheart, welcome, sir.
Hi, thank you for having me on your show.
My pleasure. I want you to tell us a little bit about, why you are involved with the First There Foundation and exactly how you serve our veterans.
Sure thing. I was a U.S. Air Force combat controller. I did 15 years in the military, combat deployments to Afghanistan.
Thank you for your service.
It was my honor. It was my honor serving this country. And I left the teams in 2013, and I was an operator, had a bachelor's degree, and I thought who wouldn't want to hire me? And I thought life was going to be super easy, and I was in for a rude awakening. And probably after a year out of leaving the teams, I started having those demons of war, as we call them sometimes, and thoughts of suicide, and which is crazy because I had a pretty good childhood, and I just never thought I would ever have those thoughts. I muscled through, a lot of praying, and I pretty much tried everything I could to heal. And I had one of my teammates, Chris Rush, in 2020, he retired from the teams after 6 months. He retired 6 months later. He committed suicide, and obviously that broke my heart.
Sorry about
that. Yeah, no, absolutely. And, and then 4 months later, another teammate of mine called me on the phone, and he was about to do the same thing while I was on the phone with him. We talked him off the ledge and got him some help, and, he's still with us now. And that night, well, I guess early in the morning, 3 or 4 in the morning, I started writing the mission and vision statement for the First Dare Foundation to help our teammates. And, there's a lot of veteran organizations, the VA, they do the best to help. But what I've come to the conclusion is, if we don't treat the soul, if the soul's broken, no matter what we do, that person will continue to have that big struggle. And we're for me and my organization, we're unconventional people, because we treat their family members as well. And by treatment, we send them to counseling, or we, talk to them, whatever we can do to get these people to stay on earth. And if we can save one person per year, that's a win for us.
Yeah, I hear that. Now, tell us about the Lionheart Recovery Center.
It's actually, I think that's kind of a dub thing out of love from my teammates. But what I'm trying to do is eventually I want to be able to help as many more people outside of combat control, both first responders, different, our sister branches, and anyone that needs it. But it's not being built yet. But we have an initiative that we launched last year called Operation Soul Rescue. And, it's a bit controversial in the States, but I think anybody that has a family member that's struggling with those thoughts of suicide or depression or just, their soul's broken, they would do anything to make sure that their loved one gets help. And we treat them with plant medicine. We've also tried Reiki. We've tried acupuncture, ketamine, anything that we can get these people to help. That's what we'll do. We want to try to do everything humanly possible to ensure that we can get these people to heal their souls.
Now, for everybody listening, let them know how they can refer people, give them, I guess, a website so they can either support the work you're doing or send you some people that may need your services.
Oh, absolutely. They can use any search engine out there, and it's First There. The word first is not spelled out. It's number 1, STTHERE.org. We have a shop if they want to, buy a tumbler. It all goes to the foundation to help our programs. They can donate money. There's a, info at firstdare.org. If they want to reach out, there's a form out there they can fill out. I mean, we're willing to help, and if we can't help them, we'll refer them out to other connections that we have in the space to help.
So again, the website is firstthere.org. That's the number 1, ST, then THERE.org, firstthere.org. Eric Lionheart, I want to thank you for being with us tonight, and Godspeed to you and everything you're doing. You're a gentleman, a scholar, and a patriot, and God bless you, brother.
Hey, you too. May God protect you. Thank you so much.
Amen. Thank you. And amigos, we continue with your calls, your thoughts, and so much more when we return. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
So I'm not hearing from you, Mr. President, a thought that you owe the president an apology.
No, I respect President and I respect American people. And if, I think that we have to be very open and very honest. And I'm not sure that we did something bad. I think maybe sometimes some things we have to discuss out of media, with all respect to democracy and to free media. But there are things where we have to understand the position of Ukraine and Ukrainians. And I think that is the most important thing.
So that is, again, Volodymyr Zelensky, president of Ukraine, shortly after he left the White House saying, I don't think I owe anybody an apology. And listen, I get it. I've had a girlfriend before, right? I was married once. There's a lot of times you have a situation with somebody and they're really mad at you. And you're like, I don't know, what did I do? I didn't do anything. Why would I apologize? I did nothing wrong. So, listen, I've been in those shoes more than once. And he sounds like me after an argument with my girl. So I get it. I do get it. And apparently there's a fair amount of people out in the audience that agree that, we should be applauding President Zelensky and his non-jacket wearing self with his appearance in the White House today. I'm not saying we shouldn't honor him. I'm saying he should give us $350 billion and stop the killing of his people. And that's really all I'm saying. And I don't know that we're there yet. But I want to go to your calls. We have calls from all across the country: New York, Connecticut, New Jersey, Connecticut, West Virginia, Canada, and more from the West Coast coming in. 833-482-5337-833-4-Valdez. All right, where do we go? Let's go to Joe. Joe is in Bethel, Connecticut, WLAD. Joe, go right ahead.
Good evening, Mr. Valdez.
Good evening.
You are right. President Trump is 4 moves ahead of the Ukraine. However, right now, I think Zelensky just needs to save face.
Yeah. With who? With the Americans or with the Ukrainians?
Yeah. Well, probably both.
Yeah, right. I'm thinking the same. I'm curious to know what the Ukrainian people think. I know that apparently he's facing opposition from within his own party because he's not. It seems to be he's taking actions that prolong the war, and I don't know that that's a popular position in Ukraine. I think that the position that's popular in Ukraine is fight to the finish, right? Give it all you got. But I don't think, given an indication from Putin. Putin has not said at all that I've heard, I want to keep fighting. I haven't heard that. Trump's not saying they want to keep fighting. And Zelensky is not saying as much, but he's indicating as much by his actions. And I think that is really where it becomes problematic, Joe. So my hope is that he will double down and say, look, I want to put an end to this thing. This isn't about capitulation, and this isn't about pride or anything. I'm willing to put my ego to the side. And if I owe you an apology, look, you got it. I had no slight here. This is all respect for you people. And he keeps saying that with all due respect, and I'm glad he did. I think he needs to reiterate it. Maybe hire a speechwriter, or maybe bring a translator, maybe do it in Ukrainian where he has better command of the language, and then have that translated so that he can do his face saving, and move on from there. Because where he's at now isn't helpful. It's not a win. Joe in Bethel, Connecticut, thank you so much. WLAD in the building. And let us continue. Let's go to Denise. Denise is in Fort Lee, New Jersey, WOND 1400. Denise, go right ahead.
Yeah, I've been thinking about all this nonsense with Ukraine, whatever. I happen to be a veteran. I'm a Vietnam veteran. And
thank you for your service.
I see a major connection, believe it or not, between the Ukraine issues and the veteran population. And it goes like this. We've given how much billions of dollars to Ukraine? I've lost count at this point.
350.
How much? 350 billion?
Yep.
Okay. So what have we given the veteran population? There's 17 million veterans in the U.S. I mean, would anybody think about giving every veteran in the country $3 million to spend and make the economy run better? I mean, when we're giving all this, I mean, I got a list of countries that we give money to from Jeff Van Drew's office, because I'm also, connected to South Jersey, Atlantic City area.
Sure.
We're giving, I think, 17 countries money. Have we? My mother used to say, "Charity begins at home."
Yeah.
That's it's kind of like take care of ourselves. I might be the person to head up a program to get veterans money instead of giving it to all these oddball countries.
To Ukraine, yeah. Listen, I got you. I agree with you. I think we have a commitment to helping the Ukrainians because of a deal we struck a long time ago that we have to kind of honor, for sure. What we don't have to do is give them $350 billion. And we did. And Trump is trying to collect on that to make sure that, we're not at a loss for that. And I think that's a good idea. And I think this mineral deal is a good idea. It's a big win for the United States. It's a big win for Zelensky that will now be protected by the United States because of our financial investment. And it somehow didn't seem to be enough for the guy, and he wanted to pick a fight today in the White House. I don't think it was a good move. Maybe it was for him. Maybe this is what he needed to solidify himself on the world stage as I'm a tough guy. I came after Trump and J.D. Vance. I said, screw you, keep your deal. Perhaps that's what he's trying to do. I don't know. But what I can say is you're right. We should definitely invest more into helping our veterans, in particular veterans, right? Because veterans all operate, in my opinion, under the expectation that they're serving the country and that they will have their medical bills taken care of in perpetuity, right? Every veteran I know goes to a VA for forever. Every veteran I know that serves with honor and it has an honorable discharge on their DD-214, they're entitled to a military honors when they're buried, and that's an honor. And I think this is part of the United States commitment to those that serve and are willing to put their life on the line. And I think that's all fair. I think what becomes unfair is what you're saying, when we start, misplacing our priorities and putting our money where it likely doesn't belong and doing the wrong thing. And it doesn't mean it's the wrong thing to help Ukraine. I think it's the wrong thing to help anybody when we're not totally doing the right thing by our own people. So really well put. Thank you, Denise. I appreciate it. Shout out to WOND Atlantic City 1400, great radio station. And we continue. We're going to take a pause right here. We're going to come right back with the rest of your calls. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
I love your show. I love your views on things. I enjoy the interviews that you have, and I just wanted to say how much I appreciate you.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
She's asking, what if Russia breaks the ceasefire?
What if anything? What if a bomb drops on your head right now? Okay? What if they broke it? I don't know. They broke it with Biden because Biden, they didn't respect him. They didn't respect Obama. They respect me. Let me tell you, Putin went through a hell of a lot with me. He went through a phony witch hunt where they used him and Russia. Russia. You ever hear of that deal? That was a
phony deal. He's got that right. So I want to get your thoughts on what's going on. Let's hit the phones. Let's go to Jim. He's calling us from Danbury, Connecticut, WLAD. Jim, go right ahead.
Hey, how you doing, Rich? Great show. I've certainly learned a lot and become a listener more than a guy that thinks he knows it all. But I think President Zelensky was way out of line. I mean, my mom and Aretha Franklin taught me two words: respect. And regardless how you feel about somebody, he should have been a little more respectful, number one. Number two is I'm not a big fan of Mr. Trump, I'll tell you, but I think this go-round, his aim is true. He's clearly trying to help. But what I would like to know is, what is Vladimir Putin's take on all this? We're going into Ukraine, not taking away their resources to get paid back for money owed, which they can't even account for. So I think we're doing the right thing. I think he's trying to do the right thing. But what's Putin's take?
Yeah, well, I think from what I hear, right, I haven't heard anything from Putin protesting any of this, right? I haven't heard Putin say, I want to continue the war. I haven't heard Putin say, I'm not willing to make a deal, which means he's on board. He's willing to have a conversation and make a deal. I think Putin is looking to make a deal to get out of this thing. He wants a little real estate on the deal. That's why he invaded the place to begin with, despite the popular opinion that he was saving children and going after biolabs and this, that, and the third. He's been there for 3 years, and they're killing people on a regular basis. He wants a part of the country back, probably the whole thing back. And I'm sure he's looking to get some area of Odessa. I'm sure he wants to have control of the ports. Who wouldn't, right? That's what these battles are always about, real estate and ports. So I would presume he's looking to get a deal. But I don't think he wants to be at war forever. The one that really seems to be getting in the way here is Zelensky, seemingly not looking to make a deal. You've got the president of the United States saying, look, I am going to get into business with you, which means if they mess with you, they mess with me. And we want mineral rights. And you have mineral-rich areas in the areas that Putin really wants, which means he can't have them because now that would mess up our financial investment. So clearly Putin's going to have to back up a little bit. And it seems to me like he's willing to make a deal because Trump is right when he says none of these guys are holding any cards. It's the United States that's holding all the cards, in my opinion. These guys are sitting there having a knockdown, drag 'em fight, killing each other, literally, and they're going to expend their resources. You know, the old saying, an eye for an eye, leads to a blind society. And that's true. These guys are going to keep going at it until there's nothing left to go at. And I think in the war of attrition, Ukraine loses just because of the size of Russia and the amount of resources, not because of a lack of heart or bravery. I think in that regard, they have a lot of heart and they have a lot of bravery. So ultimately, to me, it seems like President Zelensky needs to get out of his own way to figure out how do we get to yes? How do we get to a win? And what does the win look like for him? I don't know yet. I don't think he's made it clear. It doesn't seem logical to me why he would get in the way of making a deal when he's not asking for anything that, at least I haven't heard him ask for anything. If he's not asking for something, then take the deal that's available, right? Or at least say, all right, I want this, but I want that too. Or I'll take this, but I want this much of that. But he's not saying those things. So that's the part that I guess confuses me. Jim, Danbury, Connecticut, thank you for listening to the show and for your kind words. I appreciate it. Shout out to WLAD. And let me see. Can we? We can. Let's go to Lynn. She's in Atlanta, Georgia, WGKA. Lynn, go right ahead. You're on with Rich Valdez.
Hey, Rich. I just want to say that I absolutely love your show. I tune in as much as I can. I wanted to just say regarding Zelensky, I think he's acting like a petulant child. And I think that he really, I'm exhausted by him. I think that the American citizen is exhausted. And I have a friend whose mom lives in Ukraine. And she tells me that the people in Ukraine, over 80% of them, are fed up with him, completely fed up. Yeah. So this man really, I think, should just step aside. I think
I'm inclined to believe everything you're saying, only because I can't imagine anybody that wants to be at war, right? And again, if you ask me, I was alive in 2001. We launched a war against, Iraq and Afghanistan. People's temperatures are hot because of 9/11. We wanted to go to war. Not really war. I'd say we wanted justice. And I think, at some point, some people realized we weren't going to get justice. Others realized, okay, I've had enough. And that wears off. And it clearly, 3 years in, I would say most Ukrainians are probably exhausted. They call it battle fatigue. So, yeah, I get that. It makes a lot of sense to me. And I agree with you that he felt like he had to respond to every single thing that was frustrating Trump and Vance. And all I know is me, if I'm trying to, if I'm in the doghouse with my girl, the last thing I'm going to do is, go tit for tat on every last thing that we could argue about. At some point, you got to, you take the L and you say, hey, I'm taking this for the team. I want to get a win here.
Well, that's why I think, truly, is that it's time to move on. Frankly, I do not think he is capable of being the kind of leader that the Ukrainian people deserve. And sometimes You just got to move on. And I mean, I see that. I just see that in his personality. When I say a petulant child, I mean, why would someone who is leading a country act like he acted?
Yeah, sitting there with his arms folded, rolling his eyes. I mean, you're right. I mean, it really was reminiscent of, like me fighting with my kids when they were little, but trying to discipline them. And that's not what one expects, right? I guess, as the saying goes, he left a lot to be desired today, for sure. Lynn in Atlanta, Georgia, thank you for your call. I appreciate your kind words. Thanks for listening to the program. Shout out to WGKA. I hope you call back again and often. It's really a pleasure talking to you. And folks, we're going to continue with your calls and more straight ahead. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
We continue open phones across America. It's me, Rich Valdez, keeping you company tonight, and working the late shift with you. And our caller, his name is Jim. He's in Albany, New York, WGDJ. Jim, go right ahead. You're on with Rich Valdez.
Rich, you're the best. Hey, I got to tell you, Rush Limbaugh was advertising for C. Crane Radio 35 years ago, and I bought a bunch of stuff of him, and I've never been disappointed. I've had wind-up radios, solar radios, plug-in rechargeables. I go in the cellar, do my woodworking, go in the garage with my Model T and motorcycles, sit on the front porch with a beer and some cigar. I got my C. Crane radio with me. They're the best.
I'm glad to hear that, because I have a couple myself, and I love it. It's a great product, made in California, by the way. So kudos to Made in America.
Before I get to Zelensky, the talk radio is so much better than television. Fox has extreme left-wing radicals on, like Juan Williams. Juan Williams, hater of the Second Amendment. Marie Harf, she was a spokeswoman for the State Department under Obama, got laughed out of her job because she said Islamic terrorists need job training. And also Chris Wallace grew up in Brooklyn, and he's a Hillary voter. So stay with the talk radio. This is Zelensky. He's getting a little big of himself, coming over here and telling us what he wants with no strings attached, and it's getting old.
Yeah. Well, I think Zelensky's shorter than me, to tell you the truth. But I get what you're saying, and it is definitely old. The American people are not interested. And listen, they've been, there were Ukrainian flags all over the place. I want to see Ukraine free and sovereign and well and safe. But we can't do it to the tune of $350 billion. And what Trump's coming up with is a solid plan. We're providing protection, support, and we get money in the process. It's a win-win. Jim, thank you for all of that, for the comments on the radio, for your compliment and everything else. I appreciate it. Jane in Saratoga, New York. Let's see. Let's do it. I think we got 40 seconds. Go for it.
Okay, Rich, I just want to say Trump is great. Trump knows how to approach things. He knows how to get the best of people, and he makes them think.
Yep, he makes them think is right, and people are thinking about this stuff. Jane, thank you. Folks, hasta la próxima. Take care, good night, and God bless you, America. I'm Rich Valdez.